Good evening, everybody, and we are, as you can see, coming closer to the completion of this course. We have only now three lectures actually, one on the Lokayukta, which is going to be taken by Abhijit Gosavi on the 13th. And then the following week, we'll have one on Panchayats, what Panchayats can do, what you can do in Panchayats, and what is the significance of Panchayat law compared to so what the central government can do and the state government can do. And then there's finally one on the municipalities, where many people live in municipal areas, and what can they do under the Municipalities Act to improve the functioning of municipalities. And we are setting up a very exciting last 21st day sort of, panel of 5 to 6 lawyers headed by Advocate Carlos Alvarez Ferreira, who took up the constitutional lecture on the first day. And they will really answer all your questions. So we have actually already sent out a message to all of you to put all your queries down on all those subjects which have been listed in the course. Don't ask us or those lawyers questions about personal private disputes that you have with somebody or some other thing like that, just which have no interest to anybody except yourself and maybe your relatives or your friends. Ask them any questions you want about any of the things that have been discussed in this course, which are wide enough as it is. I mean, from the constitution to the acts and then to the rules and right down to the administration and how to get things done. Any questions on that, on any aspect of law dealing with these things, that panel will look after, and they will be there for 1.5 hours only, and maybe that session being the last session may even go for another half an hour. But basically it will concentrate only on any residual questions you may have as a result of this course, so that you go away with a little bit of satisfaction that whatever queries you had, they have been answered. So I would suggest, as a matter of fact, we have given you the option to start now itself. Formulate your questions, send them to Goa Foundation 2020, and we will line them up and we will start giving them to the chairperson, and he will start issuing them to the different lawyers so they also can prepare themselves. So, of course, on the last day also, it will be interactive, so you can also ask questions on the last day. But don't, it's always better if you try and formulate your thing, with some quiet and at least trying to understand what you're trying to ask, so that the question is meaningful and the lawyers who are on the other side will be able to answer them satisfactorily. Now, last time we had gone into the whole issue of the demand for justice letters, and we said that the demand for justice letter is generally important, because if you do go to a court or any other place, normally they will ask you, what have you done in the matter? You can't one day just get up from your bed and say, I will now approach the High Court on this particular issue. For example, there are a lot of gadas which have come up on the main road from Parra to Mapsa, and I don't want them there because they are already causing a lot of problems. And therefore, I am going to go get an advocate, and we are going to the court, and we are going to ask for all these gadas to be removed. And what are the panchayats doing, and what are the municipality doing that they are allowing all this? So any decent judge will say, sorry, we are not here at your beck and call. We are at your beck and call only when there is a matter of right to life. When some cops have come in the night and taken you away, and nobody knows where you are. The wife is concerned, children are concerned. You are not produced before a magistrate within 24 hours. Then you can rush to the court, leave everything, don't even send any letters or anything. You can go to the court and file for a writ of habeas corpus, which is let the body be produced here in court. Body means not dead body, but I mean body means let the person be produced here in court. So that sort of urgency is permissible. But you can't get up one day in the morning and say that, no, this thing I want to do, I'm going to High Court and I'm going to ask you to do it. No, they will ask you first, what have you done in the matter? And that is where we try to explain a demand for justice letter is important, because you have to say what is the nature of your grievance. There's a parallel system in the criminal side. In the criminal side, what happens? You file a complaint with the police station. You can't expect, suppose your neighbor has assaulted you, you can't expect the Mapsa police station or the Margao police station to know about it. They are in a police station, you are in your house, you have got into a fracas with your neighbor. So what happens? He has broken your head. So obviously, you go and file a complaint. That complaint is then registered as a first information report, that is an FIR. And on the basis of that, the police will begin an investigation, and then they will decide whether the person is to be arrested, or whether he can get bail, or whether he should be taken into the court and arrested for a few days. All that procedure starts. But everything in this system begins with a complaint or a written document which sets out the grievance. Without that, it's very difficult to maneuver the system, and very often that will be the primary document even when you move right up to the Supreme Court. Or the Supreme Court will say, what did you state in your complaint? And what you are saying today after 3 months is different from what you have said in your complaint. So when you draft these things, you have to be very careful. When you are drafting a demand for justice letter to any of the authorities, you have to be careful about what you are trying to say. And as I said, we are an environmental group, so we generally are not into human rights or into child sex abuse or something, because there are lots of groups working on those issues. They're important issues, but animal welfare issues, there are groups working on it, so we don't touch those things. We specialize only in environmental issues, because environmental issues, according to us, are the primary issues facing the planet. Economy is part of the ecology. Ecology is not part of the economy. That people should understand that. And I give a very easy example of the monsoon. Our entire agriculture is dependent on the monsoon. Because our agriculture, which is our agricultural economy, is dependent on the monsoon, which is a climate phenomenon which depends on the environment. Now, you do something to the environment and the monsoon disappears one day, your economy is gone. So that is why the environment for a group like the Goa Foundation is paramount, because it's the basis on which human life survives. Like, if you are in Delhi in the month of November or December, then you know what I'm saying. You cannot breathe in Delhi in the month of November, December, because it's cold that time. All the pollution comes down and remains down, doesn't get diffused. So the same thing. So your children start getting what they call this asthma and lots of respiratory illnesses. And after some time, you say this is not worth life is not worth living here. Your Article 21 rights are gone to the dogs. So you either leave the place or you try and do something. Now everybody in Delhi is trying to do something, but they have really not succeeded. So you can say that in Goa, for example, we have right to life, clean air and pure water 365 days of the year, which you don't get in Delhi, you don't get in Mumbai, you don't get in Bangalore, you don't get in Hyderabad, you don't get in Chennai. All these places you don't get there. People are there, their right to life is severely compromised. Why? Because they are not taking care of the environment. How? By locating things in the wrong place. For example, putting industries which require a lot of air discharges, you put them in a neighborhood, obviously all the neighborhood is going to suffer. Because he'll say that I am following the law, but generally he will not follow the law. He will prefer to pay the Pollution Control Board officials rather than put up the expensive equipment, and all that will go into the air, and that's how you will all die. So that's why we say the environment is paramount. And that is why all our demand for justice letters are on environment. And what we have understood over 35 years of working in the High Court is that if you go to the High Court with what we call a substantial environmental issue, forget about the law, forget about anything else. But if you go to the court with a substantial environmental issue, the courts will always look at it. I've not found in a single case where the courts will not look at it. But if you go to the court, for example, because your neighbor was putting up a 2-story building in that two-story building, instead of keeping a 3-meter setback, he has kept a setback of 2.9 meters. That is not a substantial environmental issue. They've done some cheating here and there, whatever it is, but that's not serious. The effect of it is not going to be so earth-shaking that everybody is going to lose, their capacity for a good life or whatever. No, they will not. But if you go to the court saying that this is a residential area, and in this residential area, we find that the government is now given permission for a commercial building. The residential area, all people are building of 1+2 stories. That is S1 category that we are all building. But in this area, the town planner has given a special permission to this guy who has come from Delhi to build an 8-story building. Now, that is again something substantial. Because by putting an 8-story building in a residential area where everybody has got just 1+2, you are actually unleashing a chain of events that will destroy the peace of mind of all the people who are living in that 1+2. Because you know the consequences of putting an 8-story commercial building. And then commercial means it is not like 9 to 5. It is commercial means it is 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, then there will be restaurants, and it will be till 1 o'clock, then there will be noise, then there will be music playing, and then there will be cars coming in and going out, and then which was relatively a simple neighborhood now has become a place where everybody comes and goes and nobody knows. So tomorrow the murders increase, the robberies increase. So you can see by just putting an 8-story building in a residential area, that is a substantial issue which a court will look at. And we have found this every time when we go to court. If we normally put 10 grounds, 11 grounds and so on, but we just put them. But ultimately the main 3 or 4 grounds that we raise for court intervention, they are the ones that generally work. And that's how our demand for justice letters are also submitted to the government. Now, for example, I'll just give you an example of what we did last week in a mining matter. Now, in a mining matter, the Supreme Court had said in January that for 6 months, these people have got a right to transport the ore which they have extracted from the ground, provided they are paid a royalty. If they are paid the royalty on the ore, then that ore belongs to them and they can take it away. We had objected saying that the ore doesn't belong to them, it belongs to the government because everything has come to a halt on 15th of March. The court disagreed with us, and normally we don't mind. We know that sometimes the courts take a decision which is different from what you believe, but they are Supreme Court. And you have to go by what they say. So they said, okay, for 6 months, let them take out all this. So these fellows started taking out all this material over 6 months. And that period got over on 31st of July 2020. Began on 30th of January 2020 and got over. Immediately, within 3 days, we sent a letter to the government, demand for justice letter, saying that as of 31st July, all leases in the state of Goa have reverted to the state of Goa. There is no longer any person who has got any control over any lease in the state of Goa. All leases are returned to the government as of 31st July. That is the effect of the law. So we told them, we have found that there are still many places where mining companies are occupying leases. And by occupying leases, they may be doing things which are illegal or unacceptable. For example, they may be excavating quietly some ore in the middle of the night and then trying to sell it off, on some pretext or whatever. We said, we don't want any of this thing to happen. So please ensure that all these parties who are occupying the leases, I'm not saying that everybody is occupying, but whoever is occupying the lease should be asked to quit the lease by the 31st of July so that nobody is there. And we said that in case this is not done and we find that this is not done, then we will approach the High Court with an petition saying that the state of Goa is not taking back these leases from the mine owners because they have lost the leases have been cancelled, they are no longer in hand. The Supreme Court has given them 6 months to take away whatever mal they had removed at that time. Now that 6-month period is over, and the leases revert, whatever, whether there's equipment on it, there are trucks on it, all 6 months time is given to a leaseholder to take everything out of the lease, including the ore that he may have extracted. 6 months time. So if he doesn't do it, it is confiscated and stands in the possession of the government. This is the demand for justice letter that we have written to the government. And now we will find out from our sources all over mining areas whether any mining area is now in the control of any mining lease, any leaseholder, whatever it is. And if so, then we will file a petition in the High Court saying that, look, this is what we have done. We wrote to the government. We have been following this case for the last 30, 40 years. We have now reached a stage where the leases are expired. And now it's time for you to take back these leases. And the government is in collusion with the mining companies. They are still, sort of hoping that the mining companies get their leases back, but that may no longer be possible. In any case, you take over the leases because you are responsible. And we are using for everything, we are using the primary argument that the Supreme Court has decided that the ore in every state belongs to the people of that state. It doesn't belong to the government. It doesn't belong to Pramod Sawant. It doesn't belong to mining companies. It belongs to the people of the state. So I said, as for the last 20, 30 years, the people of the state did not understand this, and they allowed the mining companies to do what they want. I said, that period is over. Now we are asking you, we are informing you that henceforth, as people of the state who own this ore, we are going to keep a close watch over how these resources which belong to us are handled. Government may be a trustee looking after them, but we are the owners. The benefit has to come to us, and we are insisting that it be removed from the ground in such a way that no harm is done to the environment. So this is the demand for justice letter we have addressed just last week to the government. And ultimately what will happen is we will go to the court. The court may then say, pass some sort of, whether it agrees with us or not, it may pass some order, whatever. Now suppose we don't like that order, we can then go and appeal to the Supreme Court. And suppose the court does pass an order and say, no, all you guys have to get out of this lease, and tells the government, you please remove them all, and within 3 weeks time you file a compliance report. And some of the mine owners may go to the court and say, no, we are actually, we have got these leases given to us by the Portuguese for life, for eternity. Concessions have been given to us without end, without a period of time coming to an end, in perpetuity. So nobody can take away these leases from us, and so they can start another endless round of fights that will go on. So this is how that system would work itself off. So your demand for justice letter, it creates this situation, and it's important to write a demand for a justice letter because it helps you to clarify in your own mind what exactly you want. You may want 15 things, but what are the 3 or 4 things which you think you want, which will improve the environment, which will stop environmental degradation, and which will ensure that if the environment is being destroyed in some way, it can get rehabilitated. Because there's a law that if you, for example, remove a hill illegally, you will have to put it back. Now that's a classic case that is going on in Kandoni, where Roshan, Matthias and company have filed a public interest litigation because those people are converting the jail into a museum for freedom fighters and whatever it is. But outside the premises of the jail, they went and plundered this entire hill. And nobody knew why they were plundering the hill, because they are supposed to do a restoration work in the jail, and why are these fellows outside the jail premises? So then Roshan and company moved the court. Then it transpired that these fellows were removing the hill because they wanted to create a huge parking area there. Illegally, totally illegally. No permissions whatsoever, on the basis of some vague circulars and so on. So the High Court was so far with the petitioners, looking at them, sharing their concerns and saying, how did you do this? And I know that last week when I was in the court said, no, you will first, come out with, tell us what you can do to immediately stop the damage being caused to the environment now in these monsoons with all the mud flowing everywhere. What are the immediate measures you would take to stop? And this will then be followed eventually by a rehabilitation plan where you will show us how you're going to rehabilitate this hill. So that is what happens when you take a substantive issues to a High Court. So High Court doesn't mind dealing with these issues at all because they also want to be seen as helping out with the environment. They have got a constitutional duty to help out with the environment. They can't say, no, the environment is for the government, and for environmental engineers, we are only High Court judges. We are only supposed to look after law and statutory violations. No, they are also supposed to look after the environment in a very serious way. And therefore, they will stop it. It's not that they don't stop it. They say stop it now. The same thing happened also in the case of the MRF. MRF was putting up an additional building for expansion. And those villagers came to us and said, see, there are 1,000 trees on this plot and there are a lot of jungle trees and there's a hillock here. And MRF is going to cut down all the trees, take away the hillock and dump it in some other part of Goa. So they started it. They got all the permissions. They started removing half the hillock. Then we moved the court together with the people from Ponda, and court said, what is the quantity you are removing? So it came out in the documents that they were going to remove 1 million tons of soil from that area. And they had no idea about where they were going to dump it. So they were dumping it in Comunidad land, by the side of the road, and wherever they could. And the court said, you're removing 1 million tons. Now that is an environment that's going to have serious environmental implications because next door is the Kandipat river. So the court said, nothing doing, you stop. This matter has to be considered. And the court says that, it means the court has agreed with you that this is an activity which requires to be done very carefully with the environment in mind. And the petitioners have a valid cause, so we are going to stop. So this is something that you should get into your system, that you take the case of Arturo and Bonwall. Now there are hundreds of people who are living in Santa Cruz, there are MLAs, there are all sorts of people, but one guy decides to be to come out and say that no, this Bonwall Lake, when I was growing up, it used to fill up every year. Now there are only there's no water in the lake by the month of April and May or whatever it is, or even less. And then some people have already claimed the river, the lake bed as part of a tenancy, agricultural tenancy act by manipulating the sarpanch and everything. And now they are claiming that that is a paddy field which they have been cultivating for donkey's years. So he went to the court. He wrote enough letters and then he went to the court. And the court said, lake, big lake like this? No, it has to be conserved. So they appointed a High Court committee. Then the High Court committee went there. High Court committee was very keen on protecting the lake and seeing that it was conserved. So they produced a report which said that this has to be declared as it is a wetland and it should be officially declared as a wetland. And they did it. And after, in the last 2 monsoons, I would suggest whenever you feel disheartened, go and see the Bonwall Lake. You can see it from the Shama, that Shama Mukherjee Prasad Stadium. If you go behind it, you can see the lake. You don't have to go right down into the lake, but you can see the water body. It's massive and it's huge. And I think it must be about now 20-25 meters, in depth. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's got a huge quantity of water involved. Same thing happened with people who wanted to save the Chimbal Lake. That is as big as the Bonwall Lake, and it supplies water to the whole of Chimbal village and so on. So they wanted to put an IT park there, and the EIA for the IT park does not mention a lake at all, because this is the way the EIA reports are produced nowadays. Whatever is going to get them into trouble, no, they say no, we exclude from the report. So the entire EIA report does not mention a lake. One of the biggest lakes that is there in this inland water lakes that are there in the state of Goa. So finally now, that lake also has become part of the list of wetlands, official 35 wetlands identified in the state of Goa, which cannot be touched. Now there's a law, the Wetlands Act or wetland rules, and there is now a committee which has been set up, headed by Richard D'Souza, who was a former chief conservator of forests, and they are going around identifying all the wetlands in Goa. So if you have got any wetland, any area where water collects throughout the year, where birds come, where there is, lotuses, where there are all sorts of things happening, then you go to this committee and tell them, see, this list, this wetland in our neighborhood is not there. But you do it in writing. You give them the local name of the wetland if possible. You give them the survey number, some identification characteristics, and if you can do a Google map standing there, you do it, and then they will come there and they will look at it. But first, they will not find it unless you show them where it is. And that you have to do in writing. Then it becomes part of that record. Tomorrow, if they don't include it for whatever reason, you can say, I wrote to this committee and the committee did not even come and they did not include this wetland. And under the wetland rules, it has to be protected. So I'm come to the High Court, you please issue an order to the authorities to go to the site, verify it is a wetland and put it on the wetland records. So this is how it is done. You have to write. Factually, you must write whatever facts you know. Sometimes you don't have information. So then you use the RTI Act. And as we have been telling people so often, you never ask for documents in an RTI application unless you know that there is one document with one date and it has been inverted on so and so date. Even then they may pretend that that document has never reached them. Always ask for the file. By whatever means, you say that there is a file dealing with this sluice gate in the office of so and so, and I want to get inspection of this particular file and all that. You please give it to me. Please tell me the date on which I can come and see the file. Now, you may be a layman, so you may say, I don't know how to look at files. So take somebody with you. RTI doesn't say that you have to go alone. You can take somebody who can show you how to look at that file. You go there, you examine the file, then you decide. There is an application from somebody, there is a survey number mentioned, their name is mentioned, this is mentioned, that is mentioned, there is a permit given, there is a sanad given by the collector, there is some other document which he has got from the State Environment Committee, whatever, all that should be in the file. Then you ask, you have seen the file, you say, I have seen there, I want this from page 1 to 6 of all the notings, file notings, and then I want from page so and so to so and so this document, this document, this document, this document, and then all the RTI officers know. They keep these stick pads, multicolored stick pads with you, and then what you do is whichever page you want, you put that sticker there, and then they just hand over that file to their Xerox machine in the office, and the clerk then knows exactly what you want. He goes to the stickers, pick out the documents, and after 2-3 days, you come, pay the money, and you walk. You got your documents. So once you have got your documents, then you can write a better letter. You know the facts, you know who the parties are, you know what rule is being violated, what something else. So for example, primary rule is that if you are doing some construction, is there a board which gives all the details of all the permissions that he has got? If he has not got, then you can get all that information. And then you can start filing your complaints. If you find, for example, that he does not have a panchayat license, you file it. But all this has to be done in writing. And as I said, you may do it individually if you are a tough guy like Arturo or like Kashinath or so many other people are there. They don't care a damn, if people abuse them or give them threats or whatever it is. They can continue. You want to come and beat me on my head? That's Sudeep Dalvi also a similar type. There are people who are like that who don't get frightened at all. But there are other people who are a bit timid sometimes. They say, oh, okay, I've got my wife and children. I don't want tomorrow somebody come here with somebody to come and beat me up or whatever it is. So what they do is you sit together in a group, or you get a good group of 5-6 people who are good close friends of yours who also are concerned with these environment issues, and then you draft them. You call yourself whatever name you want. Citizens for Para, citizens for this wetland, or whatever you want. And once you have a name and just an address, and you sign the letters and you send them. Put an address to the letter, because the government wants to reply, they should know whom to reply to. Put a phone number if they want to contact somebody, then they can contact. And then lodge it inside. And then see what happens. In all these cases, if something doesn't happen after a reasonable portion of time, then you can move the court. If something happens, if some officer comes and stops the thing, well, you have already succeeded. If the collector comes and asks the guy how you are doing this, yes, you don't have a surrender, he will stop it. If the demolition squad comes, they will come and stop him. So you have achieved your point. But if suppose you have sent about all these complaints and nobody is coming, and the fellow is constructing, and he's constructing in a field, and he doesn't have the permission, the panchayat is not giving him permission, nobody is willing to do anything. Then you got a classic case, you go to the court, and you say, see, this is what I have done. I wrote to all these fellows. None of these idiots is willing to do anything. They're all, in cahoots with this guy. And the construction is going on. It's going to do a lot of damage, not only to these fields, to a lot of other fields. So please intervene. And the court at that stage, yes, you have done enough. They will call all the Sagao, where somebody had put illegal, he had a well which was an open well. But what he did was he put a tube well alongside, and then he would pump out the water from the tube well and put it in the open well. And from the open well, he would put into tankers, and he was selling to all the people who were doing construction. Now there again, only 2 or 3 individuals decided to fight it, and they came and they wrote to the WRD, and WRD agreed with them and said that we have told them to stop, we have told them that what he's doing is illegal and all, and we have written to the electricity department to cut off the electricity and all that, but nothing is happening. So then they went to the High Court. The High Court, of course, came down very heavily on everybody. And not only that, they said file an FIR, arrest the man, close the well, remove the tube well casing so that he can't use it again. And they came down so heavily on him that he was completely finished. I mean, there was nothing more that he could do. And he knew that what he was doing was wrong. There were a lot of people being affected. The only way he could do it is maybe 1 or 2 people may not have been willing, but if they had support of some 10, 15 people, then you can do something. So they had done that work. So when they went to the court immediately took action, and that petition was resolved within 4 months. From start to end, it was within everything was over, because the government agreed, everybody else agreed that everything was going on was wrong. So the High Court said that we cannot do anything in this matter except act as speedily as possible, and they had very good relief to the people in Asagaon and to the farmers of Asagaon that this happened. But subsequently, there are so many other wells being plundered in other places, but people are not willing to come out. They don't want to. They prefer to suffer. They prefer to mourn. They sit in the tavern and drink all their sorrows, and they don't want to, then I suppose there's nothing that can be done. Now, this is one category of, as I said, complaints, which you can now, as I said last time, it depends on whom you send these complaints to. Now, as I showed you last time also, people will send their complaints sometimes to 20 people, beginning with the chief minister, governor, I don't know, prime minister, Modi, and all that. All that is useless. You're simply overloading simply overloading the postal system, the speed post, and everything. Just don't do it. It's not at all necessary. Every government is organized in a structure. Remember that. Every government is organized in a structure. And you should try and understand how this structure works. And then you will understand where you should send your demand for justice letters to. It's not to be sent out in a while like that, but directed to a specific person. And only then you will find that action is being taken. Now, like when we relate to this government and the state, most of us are very vague about what this is. I mean, I was just discussing with Roshan before we began this lecture about what is the state. What is the meaning of the state of Goa? The state of Goa is the legislature of Goa, the judiciary of Goa, the government of Goa, and the local authorities. The panchayat is part of the definition of state. The municipal corporation is part of the definition of state. It is not that there is a state there with Pramod Sawant as chief minister, or there's a governor there and he's the head of the state, and there's a legislature there with 40 Alibaba thieves, and there is there is a high court there. No, they are all there. But there is also a local body which is part of state. And I am sorry to say that even though we have gone on for now more than 20 years, where the constitution is saying this, where everybody is saying this in every ruling, the educated class which lives in the villages is still refusing to acknowledge that the panchayat is a part of state. And therefore, they are also duty bound to do certain things. It's not only the central government, it's not only the state government, it's not only this people outside, but also the panchayat has got a constitutional mandate to look after the whole jurisdiction which falls in a particular panchayat area. Now that we will be dealing with when we come to the Panchayat Raj Act, but this is state, what we mean by state. Then what we come to is, what is government? Government is not state. It's a part of the state. You have legislature, executive, government is executive. Now, what does the mean executive? Executive means execute. Legislature means you make the laws, and court means you ensure that the laws are executed. If somebody is not following the law, you go to the court. So the executive is what you are directing through your demand for justice letters. So you want something done, you don't write to the legislature. If you want something done, you don't write to the judiciary. If you want something done, you write to the executive. Because the executive that is ruling you, that is in charge of your administration, that sees that your ration card works, that sees that the transport system works, that sees that there are no open murders on the street every night, that people are not selling drugs at every corner openly under the street tube light. All these are what is the functions of the executive. You must know where. Now the executive comprises always what we call government, comprises always the minister in charge. Now in Goa we have, I think, 14 ministers. Every minister is government, every minister. But it doesn't, you can write to him. He is a part, he is the head of the, in that sense, of that executive part dealing with that particular area. Like if electricity is under Nilesh Kabral, well, he is a minister, he is a government as far as electricity is concerned. You can write to him, right? But the chances are that he, unless he's a friend of yours, unless he has seen you, unless you have called him up, unless you have done something, if you send him letters, he must be receiving hundreds of letters. In the last 2 months, people have been only sending him abuse letters for increasing their electricity bills. So you will not have time to read anything. So you have to write your letter to the person who is in charge in your particular area of that particular administration. Now, if I am in MAPSA, who would it be? The minister in the government has got a secretary. The secretary is in charge of the administration of the electricity, the whole thing as far as the government is concerned. That is, the secretary will ensure that all the money is made available for development, for changing, for putting up new plants, for getting electricity from this place, for that place. All that he will do. But the person who will actually implement is a vicar or a chief inspector or a captain of ports. Those are all the categories of people in the field. So you have government, two persons really, one the minister and then the secretary below him. Below the secretary, you will have other fellows. You will have, for example, a joint secretary, or you may have for the secretary an additional secretary, because the department is very big, so you may appoint an additional all these are in a very careful, very careful. Let me um, let me go to the IS. Now you are looking here at the hierarchy of the IS in the country. They closely match the government setup. Now you look, there are three things there. On the left hand side, of course, is the post. But then the first is a field posting. That is all these guys who are in the field. They are not to be found in the secretariat. They are always to be found in the field because their action is in the field. Then you have in the state governments, what is the position of state government? The head, you forget the minister, the blank is this is now we are talking about the administration. The minister is above all this. But the minister, all these people report to the minister. So you have the chief secretary. In Goa, it is Parimal Rai. Now, when you are filing a petition which involves the state of Goa, you always have got to make him a respondent. You can make him a respondent number 1, respondent number 5, whatever it is, but you have to make him a respondent. Then you have the principal secretary. That is, there will be a principal secretary for mines like Havaldar. There will be some other principal secretary here. There will be another secretary there. These are the people who are in charge. The chief secretary is not in charge of individual departments. Individual mines will have a secretary. Even the Department of Archives will have a secretary. Finance will have a secretary. It will be Secretary Finance. There will be Secretary Home. He will be in charge of the Home Affairs. And so on. So sometime now in Goa, because of Home, also Secretary for Environment, also Secretary for Finance, also Secretary for that. So he'll be chief secretary for the whole, all the administration, but also those 5 or 6 departments which are allotted to him. They will be under his total supervision and control. Then you will go down to, like, you've got a special secretary cum director, but usually it's a director and secretary. Now, director, it's all in the field. Above the director, it's all in the secretariat. So the secretariat is the government. Below the director is really the field of the government. So when you file a petition, you know at the local level, you also make the director a party. But I have seen that in the past, they keep on multiplying, but ultimately the government comes and says, we are appearing for the collector, we are appearing for the forest department, we are appearing for the Department of Mines, we are appearing for this, we are appearing for that. So that, I think, is sort of broken down. But eventually, this is the structure of the government. At a certain point, all those who are sitting in the secretariat are all part of the government, from the joint, joint secretary, under secretary. They're all to be defined. So you know that the under secretary does not have any powers that the deputy secretary has got. The deputy secretary has got powers, but he doesn't have the power. He can oversee all that, but he will never have the powers of the principal secretary. So it's all because what you are paid by the government decides what your post is in the government. And your post, the importance of it, what functions are assigned to that post, are also in relation to the amount of money that you get. It's a very practical thing. He's paid a lot of money, so he's a very important guy. Now, under secretary, he's paid the least in the government. In the whole government setup, he's paid the least. But he's also part of the government. So this is how, now if you send a letter to the policy issue, then you normally send it to the secretary. If you are sending something on a thing that is related to something that is happening in the field, that is the line department, then you send it to the director. Because he is actively in the field, he knows what is happening. The fellow who's on him in the secretariat may not know. He goes to the secretariat, he goes in the morning, he goes home in the evening, and he is signing basically dealing with transfers in the department, policy matters, whether lease should be renewed, what is the revenue government will get, all that, everything he will decide because he is part of government. The director will be worried about, is this fellow mining properly? Is he removing ore? Is he cheating us of royalty? Is he, doing illegal mining? Has he got proper trained people on the staff? All those things will come under very practical field operations. So you send a wrong complaint to a wrong fellow, you will not be able. You write to this secretary mine saying that that there is in this particular mine there is some illegality taking place. It is not that he will not take action. If he is a progressive fellow, he will take action. But he will say, why this letter has come to me? Or what he will do, if he is a reasonably good, intelligent fellow, he will take the letter and send it to the director. So what you have done is you have increased the amount of time spent for action to be taken. Because your letter to him now in this COVID times will take 8 days. From that to reach their director will take another 5-6 days. Already 15-20 days are gone. Then you will start giving galleys to the government saying that I wrote to these fellows, no reply has come for 15 days. But you have sent it to the wrong person that you are not willing to admit. So every part of the government has got this particular structure. If you go, for example, to the let me take you to the central government. Central government has got a similar type of hierarchy. You look at the let me expand that. You look at the central government. This is how it looks. That is the government of India. Structure of the government of India is more or less similar to what happens in the state. Government of India is cabinet ministers. Here we have got 14 cabinet ministers. Then we have ministers of state. We don't have ministers of state because they're too small. Then we have a secretary. There you have a secretary, but here we have this chief secretary. And then we have additional secretaries and joint secretaries and whatever. All of them are dealing with, as they go down, they have the specific spheres to look after. Then you come to the directors, and then the directors will be having their own function. Now the directors in the government setup in the secretariat are different from the directors who are manning the field stations. Like you may have a director normally you may have a director sometimes in the government. You may not have a director in the field, but sometimes you'll have a director in the field, but you'll have a director there also. So you have to look at your government charts, and what I asked you to do last time as a homework, and only 4 people have done it, is to take your own, whatever area you're interested in, and try and understand how that government is organized. Because only you will never, for example, send a complaint letter to a section officer, to a lower division clerk. You will send it to a director because he's the head of the division, or you will send it to the secretary of the department. You will not send it really to a cabinet minister, but he will not even see your letter. Unless, as I said, he's a friend of, you can phone him up and say, see, so-and-so, I sent you a letter, please, I will look at it. And he'll say, okay, because you're my friend. Because he's a government, so he can look at all letters. Then he doesn't use as an excuse to look at no letters at all. So you have to, it's like, targeted approach. You target it at a particular place, you get a particular response. You don't do that. Now you look at the forest department. Now this is one of the results that have come up from the forest department. Now, if you want to write to the forest department, whom do you write to? Now look at the designations. There is a principal chief conservator of forest. The address is given. There is a additional principal chief conservator because this time I haven't shared the screen. The first one also I didn't screen. Okay, there is some mistake that I made. Let me get back to this. I go back to Zoom. Yeah. And I have to share the screen. And what did I not share? Okay. So did you see this? You didn't see this?
No.
Okay. I'm very sorry that I'm not very computer savvy. If you look at the government of India level, there'll be a cabinet minister, there'll be a minister of state, but we don't have in the state government any minister of state. Then you have a secretary to that ministry, which will be a secretary to the Ministry of Environment, secretary to the Ministry of Mines, whatever. Then you will have additional secretaries who will be given different sections in the ministry because secretary cannot handle everything. Then you will have joint secretaries who will be given certain territorial parts in that particular ministry. Then there will be directors. These are more or less executive directors. Then you'll have undersecretaries. Then you have section officers. One department may have 15 different sections. So each one will be a section officer. Then assistant section officers. And then you have the clerks, the upper division clerk, UDC, and the LDCs. Now, the LDC is the fellow, most important fellow, because he will be the one who will be taking the files from all these sides, from this side to that side. But that is, they don't move the files. Or they see that the files remain at a particular place and don't get to some other place. I mean, these are all the stories people tell you. Now, this is exactly the same thing that you are getting, as I said, in the state government. If you look at the, did you see this this thing, Roshan? Did you see this one? So this is now what I am showing you at the state level. If you look at the persons who comprise the state government, you will find that except the cabinet secretary who is only there at the central government level, otherwise you will have principal secretary. Look at the state government, the middle column, there will be a principal secretary, there will be a chief secretary, principal secretary, and then there will be a director. So if you take the mines ministry, which I am familiar with, you will have the secretary mines, who today is Daulat Havaldar. Then you will have the field director, who is Vivek, who is the director of mines and geology. So if I want to, for example, file a petition, I will file a petition where I make the secretary a party, because I am dealing with policy issues where there are certain things that are happening. For example, they are not collecting this 4,300 and whatever crores which they have given demand notices for. So I go to the court and say, look at this, they issued these demand notices and they don't go and collect the money. So the court said, yes, this is a natural, this is something that cannot be tolerated. So they asked the government, you please. So at that, the director of mines can't give that reply. That reply can only come from the government. As I said, the government is all above a certain, from the, from the secretary, under secretaries, all those, they are all part of government. But you have to know where to send your letter. If you are dealing with larger issues, you should send it to the government, because the minister, the secretaries can look at it. But if you are dealing with very specific things in the field, you send it to the director. And now we are trying to work out these structures in as many places as possible. As I said, if we look at the forest, this is the forest. There is the principal chief. Originally, there was only, when I began my work in environment, there was only conservator of forests. Then we found one day there was a chief conservator of forest. Now we find there's a principal chief conservator of forest. And now we find there's an additional principal chief conservator of forest. Now there's a chief conservator of forest, and there is a conservator of forest, and then there's a conservator of forest for wildlife. Then there's a deputy conservator of forest, and a deputy conservator of planning, deputy conservator of monitoring, deputy director, accounts officer, assistant conservator. Now I don't have to write to all these fellows. If I have some particular problem, if I got a wildlife problem, I will write to Santosh Kumar, who is the chief wildlife warden of the state. I'll write to him and say that, look, this is what is happening. Now, if I want to write to some field problem, like there's some large-scale demonstration taking place, I will write to the deputy conservator of forest. There are two. I don't know, this thing has not been done properly. There is a deputy conservator of forest north and a deputy conservator of forest south. And there is one deputy conservator of forest at the headquarters. So this table has not been properly done by whoever submitted it. The deputy conservator of forests north and the DCF south are the ones whom you should advise, because they are in charge of North Goa and South Goa. They are also the tree officers. So they will know exactly how to deal with a complaint where tree felling is concerned. This, somebody has cut down a lot of trees. somebody is trying to cut down from forest here and all, you send it to those fellows. You send it to this fellow on the top, chances are that he will not even see the letter. You send it to Santosh Kumar because some felling is going on, he will not even look, he will say that's not my business. You can probably send it to Keshav Kumar IFS. He is Chief Conservator of Forest Sting. Now, what he does, what the Conservator of Forest does, what the Conservator of Forest does, these allocation of these works is not known to us. That is what I was hoping that the people in this group would do. With, like, for example, they can take this chart and go to the forest department, and maybe 2 or 3 of you can go together and say, see, we want this department to function in response to the public, to public complaints. Now, please tell us what all these different officers do. Now, what is the job of this top fellow, Subhash Chandra? What is the job of Santosh Kumar? And they will tell you. Then you can ask them, suppose there is a felling of trees in my village, whom do I write to? And so they will then tell you, you write to this fellow, if you are in North Goa, or you write to this fellow. They may even tell you, you write to the RFO, that is the range forest officer, who may be even further down on the ground, who can go and intervene directly. So this chart is not a very useful chart. I have looked at it today because Om De Castro has sent it to me at 5 o'clock. And I looked at it and I said, it is taken from some website. So it is not taken, it is not constructed from the practical viewpoint of people who want to see how to work this system. So largely as a result of this course, and depending that we have got another 10-15 days, if you can help out with this, please note, then you make this also a very good participatory course. When you do a participatory course, you learn more than if I keep on telling you these things. So I've given you now at least 15 departments. If you look at this right down the bottom, I've given you all these departments. Now somebody has done something on water resources department, panchayats, and probably on forest department. Now nobody has done anything on PWD, on ecologically sensitive areas, on the Munkar Act, NLC Act, collectors. Now collectors, for example, let me show you the chart of collectors. This is also very interesting. Now this is the chart of the collector of Goa. Now again, let me expand it. So you see here, this is the district collector. Now we have got 2 of these guys. There's the North Goa district collector and the South Goa district collector. Now below him, you will always remember the hierarchy. Hierarchy will be in terms of salary. Below him will be an additional collector 1, 2. If they find that they have more work than required, they will appoint 3. Now there are the South Goa district collector has got 2 additional collectors, and he has got 1 additional collector who is functioning in Ponda on his behalf. Then you have deputy collectors. Now deputy collector involved in land acquisition, revenue, DR, that is probably some which even I don't understand. And then you have subdivisional officers. Now these subdivisional officers are all then each of the talukas. You have Sange, Keppe, all these places. And then finally you have subdivisional officers, you can see all in different places. Now this is the structure of governments below the level of the collector. Finally you get the Mamlatdar, and then finally you get the Talati. The Talati is the fellow who's in the Panchayat. The Mamlatdar is in the block development. This fellow will be in the general office of the deputy collector in the particular place in which you are. And this is how it works. So you must, if you can prepare these charts for all these officers, then you will really help this group to be more effective. You take now the organizational chart for the WRD. It is different. Each one is different. Now here you have, for example, the organizational chart for these guys is the chief engineer. See, he's not secretary. Secretary is in the secretariat, but he is the chief engineer who is a field officer. This fellow is the equivalent of the director of mines or the director of archives. He's the equivalent of that. Now he doesn't have, he has got circles. He'll have, for example, headquarters, minor irrigation, I think whatever, engineering, whatever. Then he will have planning, and then he will have circles, circle 1, circle 4, circle 5, and then further down in the scale, there will be somebody in charge of Salauli, somebody, then all the areas, jurisdiction areas will be given here. Porvari will be under this guy. Margao will be under this guy. These fellows. Now all these are field officers. Now if you go and meet one bugger directly and complain, it is better than complaining to this fellow, because if you complain to this fellow, he will send a letter to this fellow. So again, there will be so much of time. If you complain to him, he will send the letter here. He will send the letter here. How much time have you lost? So if you have a water problem, you know whom to go and where to file your complaint. Understand. Then it will work like magic. Now in the police, we had, for example, a lot of people complaining to police station, calling up the police station and saying, there is some person having a party here, making a lot of noise, this, that, not, please come and stop it, it is beyond 10 o'clock. So the police fellow would write it down. And we used to wonder why the police don't come. But then we realized that there are special designated officers for noise pollution in problem panchayat areas. And if that bugger doesn't get the information, he doesn't know anything, and the other fellow, the fellow sitting quietly because nobody's any, the other fellow whom we are complaining, they say that this job is not assigned to us. We are assigned to do patrolling, to go here, to look at parking, the minister is coming, VIP is coming, we have to do that duty and all. We are not supposed to look at noise pollution. And at the higher level also, there is a superintendent of police only for noise, who has been given noise. If you write to any SP, he will not do anything. So this is a very practical thing that you have got to try and understand of how to work and tweak the system. Courts. We have done this also for all the criminal courts. We have done everything, breakdown, all the breakdown we have done. And we are going to share it with you. It will all come on the website of the Goa Foundation for all the participants to look at. And then you can try and understand the system, because it is not something that we are going to brainwash you with. It is something that you have got to internalize. And you got to figure out, okay, this is the way the system works. Then I have to do it this way. Otherwise, it's not going to result in any effects at all. Now let me get back to my stop the share. So I think I've already exceeded my time, but it's something even that I have learned when I got into social activism in 1986. I did not know, had no tell of what the system was. It is a system which we are educated to believe is above our heads. It is away from us. It is sitting in some building. It is somewhere else. Ultimately, I realized after Panchayati Raj came and all that, it is here inside. The outside is there to service you. You are not there to service them by paying your taxes and keeping them alive. They are there to service your requirement, because apart from that, apart from defense and outside enemies, what other role has government got to do? It has got to collect money and do welfare for the sake of the citizens. Why does the government want to get votes from people? Why do they want to spend money on people? Because they want their votes, and they spend on welfare. They give widows 1,000 rupees, 2,500 rupees. Why? Because they want things. But that is the job of the government. The job of a welfare government, India is a welfare state, is to ensure that nobody goes hungry every day. That is the job of the government of Goa and the Goa central government. We think no, it is to be done by somebody else, or the person himself is responsible. If he doesn't have a meal, he is responsible. I am working, I am hardworking, I got a job, I'm making money, I can feed myself, I look after myself. That's not the attitude. Tomorrow you'll also lose your job. Like in this COVID now, hundreds of people are losing their jobs and coming back from all over the world. And also in the same place where they don't have. So the ground rules must be there that we, the public, rule the system, dictate to the system, and get the system to listen to what we want. Not the way in which it is happening today, where I vote for them in 5 years. No, you vote for them because this is a democracy. Laws have to be made, laws have to be changed, laws have to be updated, all sorts of things have to be done. We need legislators. So for example, this gang rape that took place against this girl in Delhi, then you need the law to be changed to make the anti-rape law more draconian. If there is no law, then it will continue. So you need, these people are required. But they are not to be given charge of your lives. If you do that, they will sit on your head and they will ensure that they will act like princes and overlords, and you will only be there to be humiliated whenever they come, because they will be prancing about like princes, and you will say, oh, minister I know, amcha Kazarak minister I know. So he's come there not because he is bothered about you, because he knows that you have gone to his at least 5 votes from your house all come into his pocket. But I mean, minister I know, Michael Lova I know, Vijay Sarsa I know, and you feel that he's a great man because he has come for your wedding. This is all cold-blooded political manipulations that are going on all the time. And if you want to be a sucker for it, like they call this anda bucks, whatever it is, blind followers, then you yourself will sink faster than you are destined to sink. Everything. This is one of the most remarkable democracies in the world. I have gone all over the world, from Iceland to Uganda to, I don't know, all over. Not a place which I have not seen. This is the only place which is not only ecologically beautiful, guaranteed system of water for 4 months in the year from the sky free of cost, fertile fields. There in Europe, they have to grow in greenhouses. Here, our whole environment is a greenhouse. And we have fish and we have got everything possible. And most important, we have got a political system where I can tell a judge, like Prashant Bhushan has told the Supreme Court, what you are doing is not correct. Now, what the Supreme Court will do, they will say, Mr. Prashant Bhushan, your action is contemptuous. We are sending you to jail, contempt of court. You go to jail, what is the problem? But they are not going to take him in the firing squad and shoot him, no. You see, when you look at the freedom struggle, Jawaharlal Nehru was more than 14 years in jail, Baba. Please try and understand. How many years Gandhiji was in jail? Please try and understand. Jail is for heroic people and for criminals. I have got a different version of criminals. I'm not going to go into it, but I'm saying that you go to jail because you told the truth. Is the heroic thing to do. They're going to shoot you, no. As long as they're going to shoot you, close your mouth, like in Iran or some other countries. If you say something against this fellow, next day you're out. We are not that type of country, and we can't give away these rights to other people and say no. I keep quiet. You have to say what you have to say at a particular time. Don't give up these rights at all. And as I said, you are the boss. In your village, you are the boss together with your panchayat. And what you decide for your panchayat has to be the law for the panchayat. In terms of the planning, in terms of how the fields are organized, how the hills are organized, how the buildings are, what type of buildings. It is you who have to decide, not the Prime Minister, not the town planning department, nobody. It is you who have to decide. And therefore, you have to take that interest. So let me go to the chats and see what questions are come up, and look at there are too many questions. Now, how long, Karan is the one who is getting the most benefit from this course. Karan, I think we should insist that you pay more than most of what the others are paying. Now, how long would you wait for implementation of mining DFJ letter before approaching the court? What do you mean implementation of what is the demand for justice? The demand for justice letter in mining could be hundreds of things. As I said, now I've sent a demand for justice letter to the government. I will give them 1 month's time because the government will now activate its system. It will contact all the mines and see whether what I am saying is correct or not. They will find out that there are 3-4 mines which are being occupied maybe by Fomento or somebody, and they will tell them, "Arey Baba, you please get out these mining leases because your rule in this mining lease is over, and these lands are reverting back to the original owners. So you can't occupy these unless you have physically bought it." Some of the mine owners have physically bought the entire area of the mine. They made so much of money, they bought the entire area. Of course, there's no surface there anymore because surface is in China. It's all been exported. So, but they don't care. So I would wait for a month. That will give me also a little time to put everything into order. And then I will go to the court and say that now 6 months are over. Within 1 month's time, all this material has to be confiscated. And please direct the Director of Mines and Geology to visit all these mines, see that these people have vacated the mining leases, and attach any of the properties which are there, including machines or whatever, attach them to the government and pass appropriate orders. That's what I will do. So I'll give them 1 month's time. I'm not interested in creating more work for myself. I will send a demand letter, wait for some time, and then move. Now, how long this is, in your experience, especially for environmental issues, to what extent does the relief granted depend on the judge who handles your PIL? No, we don't go according to this. We don't look at judges and their faces. There are some judges who are mediocre. There are some judges who don't understand issues at all. There are some judges who are very good. But the system is, you don't go by whom you like, and there's what we call in the legal terminology, it's called bench hunting. You don't like this bench, so you do something, you get a matter adjourned so that you can put it before the next bench that will come from Bombay or something. So bench hunting is not something that we encourage, because if the judge passes the wrong order, you can always appeal that order in the Supreme Court and say that this is a nonsense order that he has passed, he has not understood the issue, and the Supreme Court will intervene. So don't bother about those things. Whether judges are good or bad or whatever it is, I don't think that the system functions. Even if they are all bad, they have to go according to the law. It's not that a bad judge will not follow the law and a good judge will follow the law. Even a bad judge has to follow the law. In your experience, especially for environmental issues, to what extent does the relief granted depending on the judge? Okay, I've seen that. Now, what is the name of the committee where I can report a wetland in Talegaon? Why should I give you that answer? You are supposed to get the answers. You've given that homework. You are not doing that homework. You check up with the WRD or whatever it is where I should complain with my wetland. There is a wetlands. I'm just giving you this sort of information. Though you ask me, there is an authority called the Wetlands Authority in Goa. Wetlands Authority, and there's a member secretary there. The member secretary of the Wetlands Authority is the same member secretary of the Goa Biodiversity Board. So you go and meet him, and you go and write to him, and he is very, very interesting, and he's very helpful, and he will take up your thing. And as I said, there's a new committee which is sitting, headed by Richard D'Souza. You go to Richard D'Souza's house, no, in Bamboli, and say that there is a this thing in Talegaon, this is a survey number. Go and give it, no. In Goa, you can do that. You can go to the Chief Minister's house and give him a letter. So he is the chairman of the committee. Go and give it to him, or go and give it to this secretary of the Wetlands Authority, and that will solve your problem. But do some work on this also for the sake of the other members of the committee. In your opinion, to reduce the conflict of interest and the scope of manipulation, should government change the EIA system so that project proponents don't get to directly hire EIA consultants of their choice? This is a very, very interesting question. This is actually Supreme Court in 2011 passed a judgment where they actually directed the central government to set up what what is known as an independent regulator. The independent regulator was supposed to conduct the EIA process, and he was supposed to organize the entire EIA process, the consultants, etc. If a project wanted an EC, they would have to go to him, and then he would select the consultant, and the money would be paid to the regulator, and then the regulator would pay to the consultant, so that there was a break. Today, as Chandra Bhushan says in a very interesting article, the whole system has gone to the ground, because you go to an EIA consultant, he wants the money, he will write whatever you want. So it's a useless system. So better to forget about it and to say, you please get rid of the system, because it is not at all. And now what we are doing is, we are pursuing we've seen it on the board, and we will now push to see that the independent regulator is appointed, because that is a writ of mandamus issued by the Supreme Court to the central government, which cannot be disobeyed. So if that happens, current your problem should be solved. At least as far as India is concerned. You know what happens in India in most of these things. Then from Anand, we the farmers and villages of Bishoni area have approached the High Court, having many facts that mining companies which had carried transportation till 31st July created many illegalities and other issues. Will Goa Foundation please guide us for our future process? At many leases, ore has been newly excavated. No wheel washing plants were installed, and highways were filled with mud. See, mining ore which was not sold in 22nd auction was taken out of dust and been stored in private land. In such situation, what should be our strongest point which Goa Foundation can suggest to us? You please come to the office of the Goa Foundation and we will give you all the remedies. Maria Teresa Branch, does one need to give the reason for wanting to examine any file in any department? If yes, then couldn't it alert the alleged wrongdoer? No, but the beauty of PIL is, of the RTI system is, you don't have to give any reasons for inspecting the files. There's no reason required. You want a document, if it can be given to you, if it can be placed on the floor of the assembly, that is the criterion. It has to be given to you. That's all. You don't have to worry about saying that I want it for this case, I want it for this other purpose, I want it because some illegality is taking place, nothing of this. Rui Farrar to everyone. Goa Information Commission is presently without an information commissioner, as all have retired. Can the Goa Foundation take up the issue with the government to appoint commissioners? No. Why Goa Foundation? Rui Farrar can approach the High Court. This is a mandatory requirement that there is an information commissioner, state information commissioner is required. And the court will direct the government saying that please appoint him within a few, weeks at the most, whatever it is. It's not too difficult. There are many petitions which have been filed in the High Court for directing the government to appoint somebody like the Lokayukta or this fellow or that fellow. There's a writ of mandamus that you have to do it. So then the government appoints. So please do it. I am overworked and I'm in retiring mode. Does the lodging of demand for justice letters, even if no action is taken to rectify the violation at the time, make it more difficult for the department concerned to give for regularizing, legalizing this, that? Now, this is a very hypothetical question. What your demand for justice letter, what effect it has? In some case, it may stop something. In another case, it may speed up the process, because they'll say, this fellow is now going to ask for information, he is going to do this, he's going to come. So if you're doing an illegal house, complete it before any of this thing happens, because once you put up the house, it's very difficult to bring it down. So that is a principle on which, unfortunately, most people operate. But as I said, if you are interested in damage to the environment, you can move the court eventually saying that I did not have the information, I moved a demand for justice letter, I told the government, I did RD, I got the thing, they have put up the building, it is completely illegal, please bring it down and please tell them to rehabilitate the area. That also you can do. Like Roshan has done in the case of Kanduni and so on. You can do that. Many government departments do not have websites, and even if they do, many of the links do not work, and key information is Can you advise if there is an apex body? Yes, Goa State Information Commission. But that is dependent on Rui Ferreira filing his writ petition asking for a State Information Commission. So Rui, see, there's already a demand. Once a State Information Commission comes there, then Karan will file an application there saying that most of the government departments have not put up. As far as I know, Roshan has already got some orders of that kind. That the panchayats have to be put up. Roshan, you can intercede at this stage and tell us what order you've got for putting up.
Yeah. Yeah, you can hear. So basically, the PIL was on the section 4 of the RTI, which states that every government authority is supposed to have their website, and certain information, whatever they hold, the records, etc., that they hold, have to be available on the website for the user. So in that case, there is no need for a person to actually go and ask for anything on the RTI. Rather, he should be able to freely view everything that's there in the authority, and only what he wants as a certified copy, he can go and ask for it in on the RTI. So I had filed taking Kandalim as an example because they had a lot of money with them in the account and they could afford a website. So we took that as an example, and now the order has been passed, which is applicable not only for all Goan authorities, but for full India. That order can be used. So many other authorities, like I've gone with the same order to municipalities, director of municipalities, and they are going to start their website soon. Then we've also filed a similar letter with the TCP, and that's why you'll find now the TCP entire website is updated, and they were not ready to even share the regional plan. So once I gave that order there, now you have the complete highest resolution regional plans online. So that order has been helping. So from the participants, I could share that order through the email. You need to prepare a covering letter, attach that order, or you can quote that order, you can even attach it and give it to every panchayat or department, and you demand for justice. You ask them that this is already passed by the court and your department also has to have a website as per the section 4 of RTI, and it will be easy to get that done. If you want, we can have a coordinated effort also.
So your answer is given for that question. Now from Arturo, if an RTI document is obtained by X, can it be used by Y? There's no problem. I mean, I use a lot of letters. Which now, for example, Om DeCosta does a lot of my RTI. Panjim, he gives me the letters. I don't say that this document was given to me under RTI. I said this document procured under RTI. That's all. Who procured it? Nobody's bothered. As long as there's a stamp of a RTI officer there, it's not more than enough. You don't need to bother about it. Now, if DFJ demand for justice letter is sent to minister and no action is taken, then would minister become a party in subsequent? Yes, you can make, but normally ministers are not made parties unless there's some allegation of corruption or something. You can't make ministers a party. You can't make the governor a party. There are many things that you it's not. The chief secretary is more than enough. They are responsible. Current did Goa Corporation send DFJ letters reference mining or mineral ore expiry to secretary, or we sent to director? Because he's in charge. Is there a legal requirement for the government to update its organization chart and contact details on its website? See, everything it depends on what you do. If you find that the website is not updated, you write to the director saying that what is this nonsense? Your site is not updated. It's giving a director who has already gone long ago. He's not giving up-to-date phone numbers. They're not working. The people have been transferred. So you write a letter to him, and start it. If you don't do that, you don't think that you're going to do it, because they say that it is like cashew feni. If you sell these tourists who come, you sell them very good cashew feni or very bad cashew feni, doesn't make a difference to them, no. So the same way, the Goa government, if nobody is complaining, they say, system is working very well because nobody is complaining. So you complain, no? Then they'll say, oh, there's some problem, I must do something. I keep on telling people, write and go and meet the fellow and tell him, just like Roshan has done, you go and tell him why your website is not working. You don't have money to put up a website. There are so many unemployed youth in Goa who are very good with IT. Why don't you hire somebody and get your website done? You can get it done for 20,000 bucks. On WordPress, you can get it done for free. Anthony D'Souza, this chart was on the website. The other one you're looking for submitted is from the Forest Citizens Charter. It has been forwarded. Okay. I'm saying that we have to, this course, we don't believe in giving random general information. The information that we give ultimately in chart form should be that people can just look at the book and say, if I've got a WRD, this is the person whom I'll go to. If it is Forest, this is the person I'll go to. And so they will file pointed replies. The DRO, Deputy Collector, heads up the, I don't know whether for your information, the DRO, Deputy Collector, okay, Deputy Collector heads up the flying squad. Okay, so he is in charge of the flying squad. So if you want to contact him, you don't contact the Deputy Collector in charge of revenue, but you contact this guy, and he will be the fellow who will help you out. John Mendonça, I fully agree with you, Claude. I have been all over the world for 40 years while in shipping east of Goa as witness the paradise on the sea. Thank you, Karan. Great reference. TCB website, Roshan, please do send the order. Even Kala Academy doesn't have a website. Incidentally, I met the head of Kala Academy 3 times, reference getting website. So what happens is, if he's not willing to do anything, no, then you go to his boss. See, the Kala Academy director is a field director. He's not performing well. Write a letter to a secretary in charge of the Kala Academy. Saying that I met your director, he's useless. I've asked him 3 times to put up his website. He's not doing so. Can you please remove him and put somebody more effective? That will have a result, I can tell you. So I think we have reached exactly at 7:30. I hope this session has been useful. Raymond Pereira is showing me something. Can't see it. Anyway. Okay then. Shall we say bye-bye and take leave from all you guys?
Yeah, as usual, the traditional bag to be given to Claude. Thank you very much, Claude. Karan would like to say thank you, or?
No, there's no need for all this. Thank you very much. I'm getting more and more bags. You can see there's a vested interest in me. Thank you very much for taking more of these lectures because I get more and more. But sometimes I don't find anybody, even for the Panchayat one, we had asked Sota D'Souza, who was very good, articulate and all. But at the last minute he said, no, I can't, I don't believe in Panchayat Raj anymore. The Gram Sabhas, half of them are not working. Now, this is the same chicken and egg thing. Because the educated people don't take interest in Gram Sabhas and don't, force the Gram Sabhas to do things, the Gram Sabhas end up in the hands of all those people who operate the gadas and also other places. They don't read the Panchayat Act. They think of it only as a place where you give licenses for somebody to put up some illegal wall or something like that. So you have to take charge of it. And then if you do that, the Gram Sabhas will improve. Ultimately, they are part of state. And if the Gram Sabhas improve, then the state government will improve and the central government will also improve. So thank you very much. And we'll see you next. We have got a very interesting session on the Lok Ayukta, the Lok Ayukta Act, which is a specific act only for dealing with corruption of public officials and how to get them. Because people say sometimes the minister you can take before a Lok Ayukta, and you can take all the officials who pass orders also before the Lok Ayukta, which is very interesting. So, and it is a fairly easy system for operating because you can file a simple written complaint and you can argue the matter yourself. The Lok Ayukta will then investigate your complaint on his own and find out whether there is a case, and then he will, pass appropriate direction. So there's a good avenue. So we have got a very good lawyer who will come to handle that on the 13th. So please be there. because that's again another arm strengthening citizens who want to take action on these issues. Thank you very much, Roshan.
Yeah,
Close
thank you
up.
so much, Claude. Thank you so much. Yeah, bye everyone.